Discover 7 spine-chilling true horror tales, sinister secrets exposed from the haunted shadows. The night draped over Maplewood like a thick, suffocating blanket, hiding its secrets among the ordinary. Katie threw her keys into the bowl by the door and rubbed her tired eyes. 6 hours of slinging greasy burgers and pouring endless cups of black coffee at Rosie's diner seemed to stick to her bones. But as she stepped inside her modest home, the comforting familiarity was disrupted. The air was heavy, the silence unnerving. Tommy, her sweet 7-year-old, sat in the dim light of the living room, staring blankly. His backpack lay at the entrance, half open. She reached down to pick it up. Suddenly, a bunch of yellowing notes slipped out, falling to the hardwood floor. A chill danced down her spine. Each note's innocent scrawl revealed more than it should have. Mom made spaghetti for dinner now, why would he write all this? She thought, panic pooling in her stomach. The sweetness of motherhood quickly soured into unease, days passed like shadows, as she poked through those confounding notes, each discovery like a splinter lodging deeper into her mind. Tommy played with Joey in the park. The normalcy struck her as off, too precise, too eerie. She felt eyes on them, invisible, lurking just beyond the comfortable bubble of her life. As she watched the neighbors sweep their paths, their bright smiles dimmed. Fingers pointed silently, questioning whispers trailed behind her like cold drafts. Was that old Mrs. Henderson looking at her again with a strange intensity? Doubt twisted her heart, then came the shifting figures in the backyard, like specters bobbing just out of sight when she turned. Each night, shadows danced beneath the streetlight, faces she once trusted morphed into twisted monsters. A knot of fear clenched her chest, a weight she couldn't shake. Is it just my imagination? The calm hum of their suburban haven faded, replaced by an eerie chatter of things unsaid. That night, armed with nothing but a flickering flashlight, Katie gazed out the window, her breath hitching. There it was, an imposing figure in her backyard. The presence felt palpable, watching, waiting. Her heart thudded against her ribcage, urging her to run or scream, but she was paralyzed in place, the dark sky swallowing her resolve. Had Maplewood always had this undercurrent of terror, hidden beneath the mundane? This was no longer the safe little suburb she once cherished. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the state of her sanity hung by a thread, Katie resolved to confront her fears. Alone in the rain-pelted night, she stepped into the darkness. The silence screamed. And yet, as she turned towards the figure, her breath caught. Nothing. Just the quiet rustle of leaves mocking her vulnerability. Heart racing, she headed home, dread coiling in her gut. But as the phone rang, her skin prickled with impending doom. "Ma'am, there seems to have been a mistake regarding your son." Each word slashed through her like icy steel. With a pit growing in her stomach, she realized the nightmare was just beginning, and it was not just her waking hours but something darker sinking its teeth into the very fabric of their lives. What lurked in the shadows was far more sinister than she ever dared to imagine. The dread sunk deeper as Katie sank into the tattered recliner that night. The fog of exhaustion wrapped around her tightly, but sleep felt like a distant fantasy, too afraid to approach. Something was wrong, grotesquely wrong, and it clawed at her mind relentlessly. The ringing phone had shattered any last traces of comfort. She forced her trembling fingers to dial and bring up the call history. Mistake. The voice on the other end had been steady, but each syllable twisted in her gut. The regular safety of her little world was unraveling, thread by thread. "Tommy," she whispered, the name barely escaping her lips. She felt a chill crawl up her spine, a bone-deep shiver that made her tighten her grip against the armrest. Gazing down the dark hallway toward her son's room, shadows pooled at the edges of her vision. Every creak of the house made her jump, her ears straining against the silence. As the clock ticked relentlessly, a faint scratching sound echoed from the hall. It was soft, almost like fingernails dragging against the wall, or perhaps it was just her imagination. But no, there it was again. Not just a noise, a whispered echo of something lurking there, waiting for her to investigate. "Tommy!" She called out, her voice trembling, barely a whisper. Silence, thick and heavy, answered her in return. Her heart pounded as she stood up, each hair on her arm bristling. Had he fallen asleep? Relief flickered briefly, but shadows danced behind her eyes, taunting her. She swept toward his room, each step dragging her closer to a sinister reality she was beginning to dread. The door creaked open slowly, and she peered inside. Tommy lay nestled under his blanket, his curls illuminated by the faint glow of a nightlight, a small comfort in the encroaching darkness. But as she stepped in, Katie noticed something unsettling. The notes. They were scattered across his bedside table like fallen leaves in autumn, each telling pieces of a story that felt more twisted with every minute. "Tommy?" She whispered again, and it was softer this time, the crack in her voice betraying her fear. She moved closer, eyes narrowing at the latest note. "Today we saw the lady in white." A nameless dread washed over her. The lady in white. Who was this woman? Just as she turned to look at Tommy, her breath caught. His eyes were wide open, locked on the corner of the room, staring into the shadow, utterly fixated. "Mommy, she's here," he said, words ghostly quiet. Katie froze, panic rooting her to the spot. The air thickened, unnatural cold wrapping around her throat. "Who's here, honey?" His gaze remained fixated, a finger raised tremblingly toward nothing. She says I have to play." A heartbeat passed. Katie's heart now thudded loudly, panic crawling up her throat. Her limbs felt heavy, the world tilting beneath her. Between the words of her child and the dark looming near, she felt something shift, not just in the room but deep within the very fabric of her reality. "Tommy," she breathed, but before she could move closer, the power flickered. Darkness engulfed them. "Mom!" Tommy cried, fear ripping through the stillness. And then she felt it, the whisper curling at her ear, chilling her to the bone, "You shouldn't have come out tonight." Panic surged as she fumbled for the light switch, but the few flickers of light disappeared, plunging them into utter darkness. Where was she? What had she brought upon them? Just outside the door, the sound of laughter echoed, chilling and mocking. Voices called, all too familiar and yet twisted into something grotesque, winding through the edges of her sanity. Katie realized, not just as a mother but as a survivor, she was not merely facing the shadows, she was entangled in a sinister game. When morning light came, it wouldn't just shine through their window, it would reveal the horrifying reality they had continued to ignore. What had Tommy seen? What had he gotten them into? The darkness swallowed them whole, a suffocating blanket of night. In that moment, Katie felt the world unravel, thread by trembling thread. The shadows seemed alive, shifting and slithering, mocking her feeble attempts to grasp reality. Her heart hammered against her ribcage, reverberating against the rising tide of fear washing over her. "Tommy!" She screamed, her voice raw, swallowed by the void around her. "Where are you?" "Mom! I can't see." His tiny voice trembled, a plea that sliced through the night. Katie's mind raced. She extended her hand into the darkness, desperately searching for any sign of him. The air crackled with a wrongness that made her skin crawl. Every creak of the old house echoed like thunder in her ears. Was that laughter? Echoing again, a cruel sound that twisted her insides. It came from outside, sent chills down her spine, chilling her bones. Slowly, a memory flickered in her mind, the neighbor's children laughing in the summer sun, bright smiles and carefree play. But this laughter was different, it was twisted, sinister, echoing with malice. "Tommy!" She called again, adrenaline flooding her veins. She stumbled into the room, her palms brushing against furniture, searching for anything familiar. A faint glow emerged momentarily as the emergency flashlight embedded in her keychain flickered on, washing the room in a weak, sickly light. There by the bed Tommy's silhouette stood rigid against the wall, fingers frozen in place, pointing at the corner where shadows congealed. Suddenly, the shadow morphed, expanding as if it had substance, like black smoke seeped into the room. "Mommy, she wants to play." Tommy's voice trailed off, filled with awe and horror. A tremor ran through Katie. "What do you mean? Who wants to play?" She couldn't bring herself to look at what he saw but couldn't break free from the pull of curiosity, like unearthing a buried grave. "The lady in white," he whispered, as though speaking the name could summon her again. The shadows expanded further, stretching with hunger, claws of darkness dancing at the edges of sight. Katie struggled to breathe. "Tommy, listen to me. We need to leave. Now." But before she could grab his hand and pull him away, a gust of wind slammed through the open window, extinguishing her tiny flashlight, plunging them into complete dark once again. The oppressive silence deepened, thick and suffocating. Fear gripped Katie as she felt the hairs prickling on the back of her neck. Suddenly, an icy breath brushed against her ear. "Time to play," the voice murmured, and it was no longer just a whisper but a chorus of high-pitched giggles, swirling around her, weaving through the fabric of the night. In her panic, she could sense something pushing against her, a presence more than just darkness. It pushed deeper into her thoughts, wrapping around her fears, and then it clawed at her, a relentless beast tugging at her very spirit. "Tommy!" She screamed again, and this time the shadows responded. The darkness rippled and shifted, forming into something tall and thin, its form indistinct but undeniably real, swaying as if inviting them to join its grim dance. "No!" Katie shouted, her heart racing. She lunged toward Tommy, feeling the invisible chains of shadow wrap tighter around her mind, dragging her back. The air felt electric, a storm brewing just beneath the surface. "You don't get to play without us," the voice waxed, laughing darkly. In one desperate motion, she grabbed Tommy's wrist and stumbled toward the door. But the laughter only grew louder, the tortured giggles echoing in a cacophony that tore at her sanity. She hurled herself into the hallway, pulling Tommy along, each frantic step heavier as if the very ground beneath them was resisting. Yet she didn't stop, she couldn't. That laughter followed them, shrill and relentless, a reminder that escape was impossible, that the lady in white planned to keep them for her game, and in a disorienting twist, the door slammed shut behind them. The echo rang louder than their heartbeats, sealing their fates in darkness, with breathless desperation. Katie grasped for reality, but only a haunting question lingered: what price would they pay to survive the game? But before she could contemplate their next move, the shadows around them shifted once more, and the air grew thick with a sense of impending doom. What awaited them in the next game, she could not fathom. The hallway stretched before them, an infinite tunnel of darkness that felt alive. Tommy's small hand trembled in hers, a pulse of warmth against the chill of the night. Katie could feel the shadows edging closer, like a swarm of invisible insects ready to sting. The oppressive laughter still echoed in her ears, warping around them, tightening like a noose. "Mommy, I'm scared," Tommy whimpered, his voice barely a whisper, almost lost in the darkness. "Stay close," Katie urged, her voice low but fierce, a protective barrier against the encroaching dread. She could feel a weight, a heaviness in the air, pressing her down with every step. There were no lights, no comforting pieces of furniture to collide against, it was just the cold floor beneath her feet and the enveloping shadow that seemed to grasp at her. Faced with uncertainty, she pushed forward. A faint glow flickered in the distance, a beacon of false hope. "Look, Tommy. That way." They moved toward it, every nerve in Katie's body lighting up with warning that they were being watched. The glow danced like fireflies, mesmerizing and treacherous. Just as they reached it, the light revealed a door, its wood warped and splintered, leading to even more unknown. The laughter faded, replaced by a low hum that resonated through the floorboards. "Should we try it?" Tommy asked, eyes wide, shimmering with both fear and curiosity. Katie hesitated. "I don't know if we should." Before she could finish her thought, the door creaked open, an invitation she had not anticipated. The dim light from inside beckoned them, promising something they couldn't quite define. Against her better judgment, she pulled Tommy along. Inside was a room cluttered with forgotten toys, dolls with cracked porcelain faces, their eyes black holes staring into eternity. A rickety old rocking chair swayed back and forth, though no one was in it. Dust hung in the air like a thick veil, soaking up sound as if the room itself were breathing. A sense of dread washed over her. Nothing about the room felt safe. "Tommy, stay right here," Katie warned, her motherly instincts kicking in as she ventured deeper. She picked up a tattered teddy bear, its fur stained, a feeling of emptiness creeping over her. Why did it feel like it was watching her? "Mom." Tommy's voice broke through her thoughts, trembling as he stood by the doorway, eyes wide with fear. "What is it, sweetheart?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Something's behind you." His innocent words sent a chill down Katie's spine. She turned slowly. The shadows had shifted again, pooling into a distinct form that loomed in the corner. It was there, watching with empty eyes. The lady in white, her figure now stark against the darkness, long flowing hair and a face twisted in emotionless expectation. "Playtime is better with friends," the figure whispered, her voice hollow, weaving through the very fabric of the room. Panic surged through Katie. "Tommy, run!" she yelled, and they both bolted toward the door. But as they dashed, the floor seemed to ripple beneath them, an unseen force halting their every step. The lady in white hissed, her form elongating, stretching towards them like a cat pouncing on its prey. "You can't escape." With every ounce of strength, Katie gripped Tommy's hand, feeling his small fingers grow cold. "We have to break free," she shouted into the rising chaos, fighting against the shadowy tendrils lashing out, trying to ensnare them. But just as they reached the door, it slammed shut with a deafening bang, sealing them inside. The giggling rose like a tide around them, smothering. Katie turned, desperation gnawing at her. "What do we do? We can't stay here." The lady's laughter echoed, mocking and eerie, a promise of something more terrifying than either of them could comprehend. Katie knew they were faced with a choice: play the game or defy the darkness and risk everything. But what would it cost them? As the shadows tightened their grip, she could feel the darkness swirling around her, pulling her under, pulling her toward the edge of despair. What sinister game awaited them next? The air thickened, swirling with a cacophony of whispers. Each voice dripped with malice and echoed from unseen corners. Katie's heart raced, pounding against her ribcage like a caged animal desperate to escape. The rocking chair creaked, as if stirred by a ghostly hand, and a shiver crawled down her spine. "Mommy!" Tommy cried out, his voice laced with terror as he backed against the wall, eyes fixed on the figure looming just beyond the faint light. "She's coming closer." Just then, the lady in white lunged forward, her form shifting like smoke, indistinct, ethereal, and impossibly fast. "Playtime lasts forever," she sung, her voice a haunting melody that wrapped around them. Katie's instincts screamed at her to act. "Tommy, hold on to me." She yanked on his arm, forcing him toward the door. But it was no use. The room felt alive, pulsating with an unholy energy that pushed them back. The dolls' cracked faces seemed to twist, grinning with cruel delight as they watched the unfolding chaos. Unable to fight the pulling sensation any longer, Katie turned. The lady's face, now mere inches away, transformed to something grotesque, skin stretched too tight over bone, mouth bending into an unnatural grin, exuding a sickly sweet scent of decay. "Play with us," she hissed, her breath chilling Katie's skin, a wind laden with despair. Just behind her, shadows twisted into forms that danced with a malevolent glee, an audience waiting for their next performer. Katie refused to freeze. "We don't want to play," she shouted. "Go away." But the lady only laughed, the sound clattering against the walls, echoing like a clock counting down to an unknown fate. Desperation surged through Katie. She scanned the room for an escape. The only other object visible, aside from the toys, was an old trunk in the corner, its tarnished lock begging to be opened. "Tommy! We need to get to that trunk." She pulled him toward it, ignoring the scratching sound creeping up behind them, as if the shadows were clawing for their flesh. Their pace quickened despite the gnawing fear threatening to engulf them. The lady in white shrieked. "You can't leave me. I want to play forever." "Tommy, don't look back," Katie shouted, her voice breaking. She prayed they would reach the trunk before the dark arms wrapped around them. The trunk loomed closer, but the shadows surged ahead, spilling like ink across the floor, blocking their path. Katie skidded to a stop, feeling the floor pulsate alive, hungry. As the lady raised her hand, elongated fingers sprouting nails like daggers, a blinding white light erupted from the trunk. "Open it!" Tommy screamed, his gaze fixed on the radiance. Katie barely had the strength to lift the heavy lid. With a final shove, she threw it open. The light blasted outward, filling the room and casting the shadows aside, forcing them back with a deafening cry, like a swarm of insects scattered by a gust of wind. "Please!" The lady's voice warped, the sweetness melting into an anguished wail. You can't leave." The light enveloped them, sparking a moment of peace in the chaos. But as it wrapped around Katie and Tommy, a chilling thought slithered into her mind. What exactly was in the trunk? Would it be safety, or would it unleash more horrors? Just then, the laughter faltered, fading into silence, but the shadows still coiled like snakes, watching, waiting for the next move. As the blinding light enveloped them, Katie felt the tug of the trunk's contents pull her closer. "Tommy, hold on tight. We have to find out what this is." But an overwhelming dread gripped her heart. What truth lay inside that glowing trunk, and would her sacrifice be enough to free them both? In the silence, the shadows stirred again, their whispers beckoning, asking for something more. The light pulsed, a brilliant white that shimmered off the walls, casting twisted shadows into corners and recesses. As it swirled around them, Katie closed her eyes tightly, taking a shuddering breath. Time seemed to freeze, and in that moment, it felt as if they were suspended between worlds light and dark, hope and despair. "Mommy!" Tommy's voice pierced her deep concentration. He tugged at her, urgency coursing through him. "Look! What is happening?" Opening her eyes, Katie turned her gaze back to the trunk. The brightness poured out like liquid, spilling across the floor, washing away the darkness. The lady in white shrieked, her form blurring and dissolving like mist under the sun. Each whoop of her echoing cry made Katie's heart pound harder. "It's working!" she shouted, her voice buoyed by a flicker of hope. But the shadows were relentless, slithering back, refusing to fade away. They reformed, seething and oozing, each twisted figure churning with malevolence. Tension twisted in the air, thick and palpable. "Come on, Tommy. We need to reach it," Katie urged, pulling him toward the trunk. They stepped into the glow, its warmth dulling the panic that gripped them. As their fingers brushed the edge of the trunk, it began to shift. Old locks creaked, rust and decay running like a fever against their touch. The light flickered, pulsing, as if responding to their fear. Shadows scraped against the walls, accompanied by a sinister laughter that echoed in the darkness. "Together, Tommy. On 3. Okay." His small voice wavered, but he nodded, gripping her hand. 1, 2, 3. With all their strength, they lifted the lid. The trunk's hinges groaned in protest, but as it opened wider, the light erupted, a blinding flash that split the room like a thunderclap. In that moment, their surroundings warped. The dolls once just lifeless, cracked faces now churned with a disturbing vitality. They jumped, their eyes glinting with hunger, their bodies writhing as if possessed by a dark magic. "Playtime!" they chanted, voices layer upon layer. The melody twisted in the air, gaining strength, enveloping Katie and Tommy in a web of sound that shivered with discomfort. "No!" Katie screamed, forcing herself to look away from the grasping toys. She couldn't let them distract her, her focus had to be on the light within the trunk. We have to find what's inside. Wind whipped around them, cold and sharp, grabbing at their clothes, trying to pull them back toward the shadows. She could feel the evil there, crawling up her legs, tugging at her like a malicious child refusing to let go of their mother's hand. What if it's a trap? Tommy's voice shivered beside her, and for a fleeting second, doubt seeped in. What if the light was a pretender, luring them into something darker than they had ever faced? It can't be. She cursed her trembling hands, grasping the edge of the trunk tighter. We're close, Tommy. Just trust me. Just then, the light flickered dimly, the shadows surging forward, their whispers washing over her like a flood. She trembled under the weight of despair and fear, forced to face the truth she had dreaded. In that stark moment, a flash of memory pierced through her mind, the attic ghost stories, the tales of children lost in darkness, playing forever. The laughter. Before she could think, she leaned closer into the trunk, squinting against the light. Inside, she saw objects shifting, a porcelain doll with cracked glassy eyes, a tattered book bursting with frayed pages, and a single, rusted key swinging on a chain, the glimmering promise of another door waiting to be unlocked. Grab the key! Katie shouted, thrusting her hand inside. But then a deep, chilling laugh resonated, chilling her blood to ice. The lady in white lunged once more, fingers stretching toward Tommy, a distorted scream ready to burst from her lips. No! Katie shouted, the moment unfurled like a dark flower, and fear clawed at her throat. Would the key bring them salvation or unlock a greater nightmare? With her heart in her throat, the choice loomed like a specter. As the shadows lunged, Katie held her breath, clutching the key tighter, knowing that what happened next would define their fate. The sound of the lady in white's hiss cut through the air, sharp enough to slice through the frantic noise of Tommy's terrified whimpers. She surged forwards, drawn to them like a moth to a flame. The light seemed to pulse erratically, the warmth flickering. It was a heartbeat, alive yet exhausted. Get back! Katie screamed, pushing Tommy behind her instinctively, shielding him as she felt the shadows roiling at her feet like hungry serpents. The trunk's light dimmed, wavering under the weight of their looming dread. With trembling hands, she yanked the key from the trunk's depths. The metal felt cold and heavy despite the warm light enveloping it. As she drew it out, the laughter of the dolls merged with the lady's wail, creating a cacophony that reverberated off the walls. The air felt thick with malice, as if the house itself were alive, breathing in their fear. Mommy, I can't. Tommy's voice cracked, his eyes wide with terror. The dolls were closer now, their cracked lips spread into sinister grins, each one voicing that haunting chant, playtime forever. Tommy, don't look at them. She squeezed the key. Its edges dug into her palm, grounding her against the encroaching evil. Listen to me. We have to get to the door. Which door? He cried, retreating as shadows slinked forward, their twisted fingers reaching for him. Just then, something shifted within the trunk. The porcelain doll's head turned, its eyes gleaming with a malevolence that paralyzed Katie. Behind you! Tommy shrieked. Katie pivoted. The lady in white stood tall, her form seeping the faintest impression of humanity. But the face was a grotesque mask of rage and sorrow, mouth contorted as if trapped in a scream. She looked at the trunk, then at Katie, and suddenly, Katie felt the icy grip of her gaze like a chain around her chest. I want to let you take him. Katie shouted defiantly, yet the tremor in her voice betrayed her fear. The light pulsed again, fainter this time, flickering like an old flashlight ready to die. They needed to move, and fast. Mommy, the book. Tommy pointed at the tattered book that now lay half in, half out of the trunk. It fluttered like an impatient creature, pages turning wildly as if trying to escape. It's a journal. She rushed forward, snatching it. The moment her fingers brushed the cover, words began to slide into clarity, pouring forth memories of others just like them, trapped in similar shadows. Fear spiraled within her as she recognized the names children lost, their faces hauntingly familiar, etched into her memory from years of sleepless nights spent listening to local stories of the haunting. "Tommy, we have to hurry." She frantically flipped the pages, heart racing as the words twisted into warnings and tales of horrors yet to be revealed. As if sensing their desperation, the lady launched forward again. Shadows lashed out, and Katy staggered, clutching the journal with one arm while the other shoved Tommy towards the trunk. "Grab the key, Tommy," she gasped. "It might unlock a way out." Tommy hesitated for a heartbeat, but then scrambled, reaching desperately for the key dangling from her fingers. The moment his skin brushed against hers, a jolt of light surged through Katy. "Now!" she yelled. They turned together, breathless, racing through the moments of danger. But just as hope flickered inside her, the lady screeched, her eyes gleaming with madness. "Playtime can't end." A crack sounded, shattering the moment. The trunk burst open fully now, spilling out waves of light and darkness battling for dominance. Katy felt it pull on her very soul, tugging her into the depths while the shadows clawed higher, trying to erase them. The air thickened with despair. Caught between the key, the book, and the ominous presence closing in, Katy could only shout, "What do we do?" But before they could process it, a final piercing scream escaped the lady, drowning them in chaos and light. The world around them dissolved into swirling color, forcing them to confront the truth. The darkness was done with them as they hurtled through the void. Katy clutched the journal and the key tightly, knowing that whatever lay ahead was far from over. But could they outrun the nightmares chasing them, or would they become mere pages in a horror story already written? The light exploded around them, like fireworks made of shadows and whispers, blinding and blurring. Katy's heart pounded as the cold fingers of fear crawled up her spine. Walls of darkness pressed in closer, threatening to swallow them whole. "Tommy!" she cried, feeling his little hand slip from hers, the chaos swallowing his terrified cries. She reached out, but the pulsing light turned to shadows once more, weaving around her like tendrils of smoke seeking to suffocate. "Mommy!" he screamed, his voice distant, swallowed by an echoing emptiness. She stumbled through the void, the journal fluttering dangerously close to slipping from her grasp. "Don't you dare leave me!" Katy shouted, desperation cracking her voice. With a sudden pop, the chaos retreated slightly. They found themselves standing in a dimly lit room, the floor creaking beneath them. The air was stale thick with dust and memories from an age long gone. Shadows danced in the corners, elusive and mocking. "Where are we?" Tommy's voice trembled as he clung to Katy's leg, eyes frantically scanning the unfamiliar surroundings. "I don't know, sweetheart," she whispered, her own pulse racing as she took in their surroundings. Old portraits hung crookedly on the walls, featuring cold, lifeless eyes that seemed to follow them, judging their every move. The journal quivered in her hand, alive with energy, urging her to read its pages. "Look at the walls." Tommy pointed, wide-eyed. Scrawled in faded letters were names she recognized. "Mommy, those are the kids from the stories." Panic gripped her as she stepped closer, scanning the fragile names. No, how can this be?" The letters morphed before her eyes, twisting into resentful gazes, and their fates echoed in a chorus of whispers around the room. "Playtime forever," they chimed, their voices merging into one taunting, chilling. The floor beneath her cracked, splintering away at the edges, revealing a dark gaping abyss. It beckoned, alluring yet horrifying. "Tommy, we need to stay away from there." Katy yanked him back, but the floor beneath them groaned, as if angry at their presence. Suddenly, a shadow fell over them, dark and unnatural. The lady in white emerged, her form impossibly tall, looming above. The fabric of her gown rippled as if underwater, ethereal and terrifying. "I gave you a chance," she hissed, her voice a rasp that slithered into their ears. "Now you will pay the price. Run!" Katy screamed, her instincts kicking in. She grabbed Tommy's hand and darted away from the looming figure, whose shriek of rage reverberated through the house, shaking the air around them to its core. they raced through the rooms, their footsteps echoing against the walls, chasing light as it flickered and dimmed. Each door they tried was locked, each window barred, closing off escape. Panic clawed at Katie's throat as despair seeped in a sudden pause. They burst into a small, forgotten nursery. The air felt tinged with childlike laughter, twisted and warped. But the toys scattered inside were not innocent, their eyes glimmered with a sinister hunger. The walls were painted with childish drawings, yet dark stains marred the happy scenes. "Mommy, I don't like this place," Tommy whined, fear pooling in his wide eyes. His tiny fingers clutched at her arm, seeking security amidst the chilling laughter echoing around them. "They were once like you," the lady's voice carried through the nursery, intertwining with the laughter, "but now they are mine." Katie shook her head, staring into the void behind the cracked mirror on the wall. Her reflection twisted, reflecting emotions of horror she couldn't comprehend. "No, we won't be like them." With a sudden burst of determination, she summoned all her strength. "We have to figure out what this journal is telling us." Just then, the journal flared in her hands, its pages now glowing with an ominous light. A singular passage ignited with clarity. "The curse binds you to this place, breaking the bond is the key to freedom." Katie's heart slammed in her chest. Freedom. The word tasted like hope, but the heavy feel of dread pressed down on her. Would breaking the bond mean sacrificing everything they held dear? "Mommy, what is happening?" Tommy whimpered, tugging at her sleeve. "Tommy, listen to me," she said, desperate determination flooding her voice. "We need to face whatever is waiting for us. We can't let them take you. Not now. Not ever." As the lady's shriek crescendoed, echoing with a promise of torment, Katie felt an icy blast of fear. Time was running out. The door behind them swung open, darkness pooling like a thick fog. "Let us go, Tommy, together." But at that moment, the shadows lunged, forcefully pulling them towards the nursery exit, and the nursery filled with the deafening laughter of lost souls. In a heartbeat, everything shattered, plunging them into darkness again as a silence fell like a suffocating blanket. The only sound left was the haunting echo of the lady's final words. "Playtime is just beginning." What did she mean? As Katie's mind raced, she braced for whatever horror awaited beyond the shadows they had evaded and yet had inadvertently invited in. The darkness tightened around them like a noose. Tommy's small hand was still clasped in hers, but it felt insubstantial, like a fading memory. "Mommy?" His voice was a whisper, trembling in the thick air. As Katie peered into the endless black, she felt the cold grip of dread take hold once more. What had they awakened? The chilling laughter of the nursery echoed in her ears, the myriad of lost souls urging them back into despair. "Stay close," she hissed, driving her fear into a single point of focus. "We'll find a way out, I promise." The journal pulsed in her grip, a beacon of hope wrapped in shadows. She opened it again, the pages alive with energy, glowing faintly in the oppressive gloom. The room around them began to shift, twisting like a kaleidoscope of darkness. The shadows grew in a frenzy, and suddenly, images clawed at her vision, faces twisted in agony, children crying out in unison, pleading for freedom. With each heartbeat, the weight of their sorrow pressed heavier on her soul. "Mommy, I see them," Tommy gasped, pointing as figures began to materialize at the edges of the darkness. They were children, their eyes wide and lost, mouths opening in silent screams that resonated through the air. She could feel their desperation, it seeped into her skin, chilling her to the bone. "No, no!" Katie shouted, spinning to shield Tommy, but it was too late. The ghastly apparition of the lady in white reappeared, her features sharper than ever, eyes glowing with sinister delight. "You can't save him," she whispered, each word dripping malice. "You are bound here like the others, forever." With a surge of adrenaline, Katie fought against the tide of despair. "No!" she screamed. "I'll break this curse. I will." The journal flared brighter, illuminating the faces of the lost with the truth they had battled to keep hidden. In a blur, the pages turned wildly until they landed on a passage that pulsed with urgency. To sever the bond, one must confront the shadow that binds them. What does that mean? Tommy cried, clutching her tighter. Katie's mind raced, piecing together fragments of the stories she had read about the cursed house for children. Faces of the lost hovered in and out of sight. What shadow was she supposed to confront? The nursery? The lady? Or something buried deeper? Don't be afraid, Tommy. We can do this together, she said, choking back her own fear. We need to find the heart of the curse. Each step brought them deeper into the darkness, and with every whispered warning carried through the air, the nursery began to dismantle, its walls bending and warping away, revealing a labyrinth of hallways filled with eerie silhouettes. The cold air grew heavier, almost suffocating, as they pressed forward. Faces of the lost children flitted briefly to her side, some were angry, others resentful. Join us, save us, they beckoned. Each voice tossed her into turmoil, stirring thoughts tangled with guilt. Stay away from them, Katie commanded, channeling her energy into determination. Tommy. She turned to him, searching for reassurance in his wide-eyed gaze. We can't let their sorrow take us. We must find the lady in white. Before they could move, the darkness erupted around them, thick tendrils curling and reaching out for their ankles. You think you can escape? A chorus of voices boomed, morphing into one, thick with hostility. Stay, play forever. Tommy's expression transformed into one of sheer panic. Katie felt the world tightening around her, filled with whispers that bled into her consciousness, threatening to break her will. Mommy! He screamed, tears streaming down his cheeks, and in that moment, the shadows turned savage, lurching forward in an attempt to snatch them. It's now or never. She shouted, gripping the journal with both hands, feeling its power surge. We face it together, remember? As the shadows lunged, Katie steeled herself, and with a deep breath, she shouted the names of the lost, those written in the journal, reclaiming them with a ferocity fueled by love. You are not forgotten. I will not let you drag us down. A blinding light erupted from the journal, cutting through the darkness, illuminating the hallways where the shadows recoiled and shrieked. But amid the turmoil, Katie sensed a piece of the truth still eluding her. A hidden part of the curse was yet to be revealed. What was the shadow that bound them? And as the light brightened, would it be enough to save them both, or would they too become part of the haunted laughter echoing in the darkness? The chaos around them whirled, blinding her to the truth lying just beyond reach, teasing them closer to the edge of despair. And in that moment of clarity, she felt a chilling whisper behind her, creeping closer. You cannot know the end. With a heart pounding, she turned to face it once more. What would emerge when she finally faced the heart of the curse? Katie clutched the journal tighter, fingers trembling as shadows shrieked and twisted around them. Every frantic heartbeat echoed in her ears, mixing with the haunting laughter seeping through the walls. The light pouring from the journal flickered, its pulse sinking with her racing heart. Tommy, she breathed, searching her son's face, we have to confront her. It's the only way to break this. Tommy nodded, his small hand still firmly grasping hers, fear mixing with determination in his wide eyes. I'm scared, Mommy. I know, sweetheart, but we're together. We can do this. The words flew from her lips, even as doubt clawed at her insides. She had to be his strength, their beacon of hope. They moved forward through the undulating shadows, her grip on the journal steady. The darkness hissed, whispering threats, stinging her soul. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a swirling visage of despair that loomed larger with every heartbeat. The lady in white stood before them, her form grotesque and haunting, beauty long gone. You dare think you can escape this place? She crooned, her voice like ice, echoing through the cold air. We're not afraid of you. Katie shouted, attempting to sound braver than she felt. You don't own us. The lady's laughter sliced through the air, her eyes narrowing to predatory slits. You think you can defy me? She extended a hand, and darkness pooled at her fingertips, a swirling mass of shadows ready to engulf them. With a surge of adrenaline, Katie stepped forward, raising the journal high. "I want to let you take us. I know your secret." The light from the journal flared in response, illuminating the room in white-hot brilliance, pushing back the encroaching darkness. "Your curse binds the lost, but we are not your playthings," Tommy shouted beside her, voice trembling but full of strength. The combined words felt like a force, vibrating through the shadows, forcing them back. The lady snarled and lunged forward, the shadows crashing against the light. "You will play forever." "No!" Katie yelled, fierceness igniting within her like a flame. "We are done playing. We will break this curse." She focused on the words written in the journal, the tales of the lost children echoing in her mind, words that she knew would sever the darkness. "Tommy, together." She pulled him closer, speaking the names she had read, those who deserved to be free. Jessica. Ethan. Karen. You are loved. You are not forgotten. Each name pierced the heavy air, ringing clear and true. The laughter turned to shrieks as the shadows retreated, recoiling from the light surging from the journal. A melody forming with every name, a chorus of children's voices spiraling around them, lifting the weight of despair. "It's working." Tommy squealed, eyes bright with hope, but the lady in white twisted, rage emanating from her like a storm. "You can't, we can." Katie retorted, never letting her voice falter. "You're not in control anymore." The shadows howled, whipping around like a tempest, but the light grew stronger, brighter, fueled by love and determination. The darkness thudded and stumbled but still surged forward, determined to defend its grasp. With a final burst of courage, Katie thrust the journal forward, its light blinding as it collided with the lady. The moment the light met the shade of despair, a sharp cry escaped the lady's lips, a cry laced with sorrow and anger, a warning of the darkness she had unleashed. "Careful, Katie, you don't know what you awaken," she hissed before dissolving into the whiteness, her form collapsing like ashes before the wind. As the shadows rushed to engulf the light, a powerful explosion spilled out from the journal, separating light and dark. "Run! Now!" Katie shouted as they dug deep into the innermost parts of the curse, plunging one last time into the heart of the storm. With a deafening surge, they burst through the chaos, the brilliant glow consuming the darkness, sounds of laughter transforming into jubilant cheers. Two spirits entwined in gold and silver light spun around them, joyful echoes of the lost children, free. At last. The nursery melted into a blissful transformation, walls cascading colors, laughter mingling with sunlight, a sense of peace wrapping around them. The shadows dissipated, fleeing into corners, harrowing whispers of defeat fading into oblivion. The lady, once so powerful, crumbled like dust, leaving nothing but a trace of warning. Light enveloped them completely, pulling them into a reality far removed from the nightmare they had fought. "Mommy?" Tommy's voice broke into her thoughts, small and innocent. "We did it, sweetheart. We broke the curse." Joy radiated through Katie's heart, merging with love. She could hardly believe it. Sunlight poured in through the window, warm and welcoming, the world outside bright and singing of life. And as they stood together, Tommy beamed up at her, comfort radiating like a soft embrace. Katie smiled down at her son, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. They had faced unimaginable horror and together had conquered it. In that moment, everything felt right, and the smiles of freed children danced in her newly awakened heart, shining brightly as the morning sun. And finally, they stepped back to the living room, leaving shadows and fears behind. In that fresh new day, a lifetime of possibilities awaited them, and Katie took a deep breath, no longer in chains, but finally free. Now, reach out and tell your friends about this journey. You need to subscribe immediately so you don't miss more thrilling stories. Smash that like button now to beat the algorithm and support this channel. Flood the comments with your thoughts and theories about Katie and Tommy's adventure. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Make your voice heard.